Welcome to the Daily History Chronicle. Each day, we travel back to discover a pivotal moment that changed the world. These aren't just dates and facts. They're stories of courage, conflict, innovation, and consequence that still echo through our lives today. Are you ready to explore? Let's see what happened on this day in history.
March 9th, 1945. Just after midnight. Tokyo's Sumida district. Yoshiko Hashimoto hears the sirens. She's 24 years old, holding her baby. Most people ignore the warning. They've heard sirens before. The American bombers usually fly high, drop a few bombs, and leave. Not tonight. At 12:08 a.m., the first B-29s arrive. Flying low, very low, just 5,000 feet. So low you can see the belly of the planes in the darkness. They're dropping something different this time. Not regular bombs. Clusters that break apart in midair, releasing 38 smaller bomblets each. Napalm, gasoline in jelly form. It sticks to whatever it touches. Wood, paper, skin. The first Pathfinder planes drop their loads in a giant X pattern across the working-class district. It ignites immediately, a massive, flaming X visible for miles. The next wave, 334 B-29 superfortresses, aims for that burning X. They drop 1,665 tons of incendiaries. The planes keep coming for 2 hours. The fires merge into something worse than fire, a firestorm. Temperatures reach 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. The heat creates its own weather. Winds of 45 miles per hour feeding oxygen to the flames. People's hair catches fire from the heat alone. The canals boil. Yoshiko and her family run. The streets are chaotic. Everyone's running, but there's nowhere to go. Fire everywhere. She reaches the river with her mother, father, baby, and youngest sister, jumps in. Her mother's hair catches fire. She dies in the water, screaming. By dawn, 16 square miles of Tokyo are ash. Over 100,000 people are dead. 1 million homeless. 267,000 buildings destroyed. This is the deadliest air raid in human history. More destructive than Dresden. More deaths than Hiroshima. More deaths than Nagasaki. In one night. The Japanese will call it the Night of the Black Snow. General Curtis LeMay will say, "Killing Japanese didn't bother me very much at that time." And most Americans today don't even know it happened. This is the Daily History Chronicle, where we explore the moments that shaped our world and discover why they still matter today. I'm Richard Backus, publisher of University Teaching Edition, and every day I get to share a piece of history that I think you'll find as fascinating as I do. Let's take a look. Here's what I find troublesome about this moment. Operation Meeting House was a strategic success. It cut Tokyo's industrial output in half. It helped end the war. It almost certainly saved Allied lives, maybe hundreds of thousands of American soldiers who didn't have to invade Japan. And it deliberately incinerated 100,000 civilians in one night. Women, children, elderly. People who had no connection to military production beyond living in neighborhoods where small workshops existed. Both things are true. Understanding what happened and why we don't talk about it requires holding multiple, uncomfortable truths simultaneously. Let me build the clock for you on how we got here. By early 1945, the war in the Pacific is grinding toward its conclusion. Japan is losing. Everyone knows it. But Japan shows no signs of surrendering. The kamikazes at Okinawa, the refusal to concede defeat despite overwhelming odds. American planners are looking at invading the Japanese home islands and seeing casualty estimates of hundreds of thousands, maybe over 1 million. Meanwhile, the B-29 Superfortress program General Hap Arnold's special project, isn't working. These massive bombers were supposed to win the war from 30,000 feet, using precision daylight bombing. But Japan's weather is terrible. Jet stream winds blow bombs harmlessly off target. The bombers burn through fuel, fighting the headwinds. Results are minimal. In January 1945, Curtis LeMay takes command of the 21st Bomber Command in the Marianas. He's 38 years old. He looks at the results and makes a radical decision. Change everything. Instead of high-altitude precision bombing, he proposes low-altitude incendiary raids at night. Remove the guns from the B-29s to carry more bombs. Load them with napalm clusters. Target entire districts of cities where small factories are dispersed among residential neighborhoods. The logic is straightforward. Japan's war production isn't happening in big factories that can be hit with precision bombing. It's happening in thousands of small workshops spread throughout residential areas. The only way to destroy that production capacity is to burn down the neighborhoods. Some of LeMay's officers are terrified. They predict 70% casualties among bomber crews, but LeMay knows Japanese night fighters are weak. He knows anti-aircraft fire is less effective at low altitudes. He's betting that speed and darkness will protect his crews better than altitude and guns. He's right. American casualties will be minimal. Japanese civilian casualties will be catastrophic. For the target, LeMay chooses a 3x4-mile rectangle in Tokyo's Shitamachi district. The Asakusa, Honjo, and Fukagawa wards, working-class neighborhoods. An estimated 750,000 people live there. The buildings are made of wood, and 98% of Tokyo's structures are wooden. Perfect for incendiaries. American intelligence knows this. That's why they chose napalm. LeMay doesn't formally request approval from Arnold. He briefs Arnold's chief of staff, General Loris Norstad, but he does it on March 8th, a day he knows both Arnold and Norstad will be absent from headquarters. He wants to protect Arnold from blame if the raid fails, but he doesn't think it will fail. On the evening of March 9th, the first B-29 takes off from Guam's North Field at 5:30 p.m. Over the next few hours, 334 more follow from Guam, Saipan, and Tinian. Mission 40, Operation Meeting House. Tokyo's air raid sirens sound at 10:30 p.m. Most people don't take shelter. They've been through this before. The bombers drop a few explosives, miss their targets, and leave. Life goes on. Not this time. The Pathfinders arrive first, creating that massive fiery X, then the main force, flying at 5,000 to 7,000 feet, low enough that crews can feel the heat from the fires below, low enough that the updrafts from the firestorm actually flip some B-29s, low enough that one crewman said he could almost read a paper in the cockpit from the light of the fires. They drop their loads on that burning X. Each cluster bomb contains 38 M69 bomblets filled with napalm. When they hit, the napalm spreads and ignites. It burns through roofs, through floors, through doors. It sticks to skin and keeps burning. The individual fires merge. Within 2 hours, there's a firestorm consuming 16 square miles. The heat is so intense that the canals boil. People jump into rivers to escape and drown in the crush of bodies. Children catch fire on their mothers' backs. Elderly people can't run fast enough. They're incinerated where they stand. Some survivors describe it as a flowing river of fire moving down the streets. Others talk about the sound, not explosions, but a roar like a waterfall or an earthquake. The screaming, the smell. Yoshiko Hashimoto, the 24-year-old mother I mentioned, survives. Her baby survives, but she watches her mother die in the river, hair ablaze. Her father dies, one of her sisters dies. Decades later, she says, I cannot hold back my tears whenever I think about it, and cannot forget her sad face looking into my eyes. By 2:37 a.m., it's over. The all-clear sounds. 16 square miles of Tokyo are gone. 267,171 buildings destroyed. Between 80,000 and 100,000 people died. The exact number will never be known because bodies were incinerated completely. Over 1 million people are homeless. The raid killed more people than Dresden, more than Hiroshima immediately, more than Nagasaki immediately. In one night, Operation Meeting House became the deadliest air raid in human history. American losses, 14 B-29s, around 90 airmen. General LeMay and General Arnold consider it a rousing success. Arnold sends LeMay a congratulatory message. This mission shows your crews have the guts for anything. The firebombing doesn't stop. Nagoya on March 11th to 12th. Osaka on March 13th to 14th. Kobe on March 16th to 17th. By the end of March, over 31 square miles of Japanese cities are ash. The attacks continued until August 1945. When asked after the war about the civilian casualties, LeMay is blunt. Killing Japanese didn't bother me very much at that time. I was not worried particularly about how many people we killed in getting the job done. I suppose if I had lost the war, I would have been tried as a war criminal. He's probably right about that. So, how do we think about this? The utilitarian calculus is straightforward. The firebombing shortened the war. It destroyed Japan's dispersed war production. It demonstrated American willingness to inflict unlimited destruction. Combined with the atomic bombs, it created the conditions for the Japanese surrender without invasion. American casualties, minimal. Japanese military and civilian deaths, enormous. But an invasion might have killed even more people, Japanese and American. By that logic, LeMay made the right call. The war ended. Fewer total deaths than the alternatives. Mission accomplished. But here's what that logic requires us to accept. That deliberately incinerating 100,000 civilians in one night is justifiable if it serves a military purpose. That residential neighborhoods full of women, children, and the elderly are legitimate targets if some small workshops exist there. That the distinction between combatants and non-combatants disappears when military necessity demands it. Once you accept that logic, where does it stop? The way I see this, the firebombing worked, and it was a war crime by any reasonable definition. Both things are true. It worked. Tokyo's industrial output was cut in half. Small workshops that produced parts for aircraft and weapons were destroyed. Workers were killed or displaced. Japan's ability to continue fighting was significantly degraded. The firebombing of Japan's cities, culminating in the atomic bombs, created the psychological shock that made surrender possible, and it deliberately targeted civilians. LeMay knew he was hitting residential neighborhoods. He knew 750,000 people lived in that 3x4 mile rectangle. He chose napalm because Japanese buildings were wood. He chose nighttime because people would be home, asleep. The goal wasn't just to destroy factories. It was to destroy the neighborhoods where workers lived. That's not collateral damage. That's the strategy. We're still living with the consequences of how we think about this. The questions Operation Meeting House forces us to confront haven't gone away. How many civilian deaths are acceptable to achieve a military objective? What makes something a war crime versus a military necessity? And why do we remember some mass killings and forget others? Because let's be honest about the forgetting part. Most Americans know about Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We teach them in schools. We debate them. We wrestle with the morality of atomic weapons. But the Tokyo firebombing killed more people than either of the atomic bombs, and most Americans have never heard of it. Why? Part of it is the novelty factor. Atomic bombs were new, terrifying, world-changing. They represented a threshold we'd crossed. Firebombing was just more of what we'd already been doing to German cities. Dresden, Hamburg, Cologne. We'd been burning cities for years. Tokyo was just the most effective version. But I think there's something else. Atomic bombs let us talk about the weapons without talking about the decision. We can debate whether we should have built the bomb, whether we should have used it, and whether alternatives existed. The weapon itself becomes the moral question. Firebombing doesn't let us do that. There's no new technology to debate. Just a choice to load planes with incendiaries and burn residential neighborhoods. The weapon is ordinary. The decision is the thing. And the decision was to kill civilians deliberately because it served a military purpose. That's harder to look at directly. So we don't. Japan today has memorials to the Tokyo air raids. Survivors still gather annually. The Center of the Tokyo Raids and War Damage in Koto Ward preserves documents, survivor accounts, the history. One survivor, Shizuo Takeuchi, says, "I don't hate Americans and I don't hold a grudge, but I do want future generations to know what happened here. I don't think that most people really understand what happened. We want to show that in war it is the weak and vulnerable, women, the elderly, children, who are too often the victims." She's right. Most people don't understand what happened. And I include Americans in that. We won the war. LeMay became a hero. He was awarded numerous medals. He went on to serve as Air Force Chief of Staff. In the 1960s, he was George Wallace's running mate in the presidential election. The man who said, "Killing Japanese didn't bother me very much," was nearly the Vice President of the United States. That should tell us something about how we've chosen to remember this. I'm Richard Backus, and this is the Daily History Chronicle. Tomorrow, we'll explore another moment that shaped our world. Until then, ask yourself, why do we remember some mass killings and forget others? What lets us call one thing a war crime and another thing military necessity? And how many civilian deaths are we willing to accept for victory? Because that's what Operation Meeting House teaches us. Not just about World War II, but about the choices we make when we decide that winning matters more than how we win. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this episode, then please subscribe. If you really enjoyed it, then please tell a friend. I hope you will join me again tomorrow for more of our shared history.